ghetto. Turning our attention to cricket on the SportsMax Zone. Just reading an article about Candice Staton and her rendition of In the Ghetto. She received a message saying, well done, from Elvis Presley, which she kept for years. Anyway, now talking about music here. President of the Trinidad and Tobago Cricket Association, Azim Bassarath, is seeking a fifth term in office at elections set for October 30. Bassarath first took up the post in 2009, replacing the former West Indies wicketkeeper Derek Murray, or a former West Indies wicketkeeper Derek Murray. There have been a few. Under the new constitution adopted on Saturday, October 2, presidents cannot serve for more than 2 consecutive terms. Now, attorney at law and the former Windies youth captain Zahir Ali had made a submission calling for presidents to have a gap term away from high-level board duties before they can return to again offer themselves for the office of president. That's just part of the submission he made. But in an interview with the Trinidad and Tobago Newsday, Bassarath said, quote, that can't happen. We're living in a small space and the population is too small to accommodate that. Now, we had Zahir Ali on the show yesterday making his case, and we've now turned to the man seeking another term in office, Azim Bassarath, for a discussion of his candidacy and, of course, his response to Zahir Ali's submission. Azim Bassarath, welcome once again to the SportsMax Zone, sir.
Thank you very much, George, and it's always a pleasure to be on your program.
Excellent, sir. All right, first things first, how are you feeling about your prospects of getting in for term number 5?
Just as I was for the first term, very confident.
And the basis of that confidence?
Well, I think I did a fairly good job in the previous terms, and I think there's a lot of work still to be done. COVID has stopped us in our tracks over the past 2 years. There was nothing that cannot be done. But there is things to be done, and we were on an upward mobility when the COVID struck. And I think that we have to continue from there as soon as the government allows us to, get the players back out on the park. Yeah.
Zahir Ali came yesterday and he told us some things which would appear to run counter to the inclusivity which we know the TTCB looks to foster. And of course, there was, based on his report, not inadequate attempts made to foster good governance now the TTCB runs. And I'm saying to you that Zahir Ali said that submissions that he made were not given reasonable consideration. And so he feels aggrieved, feels as if the system at the TTCB is rigged to keep a kind of old boys club in place, kind of ring-fence leadership, and not allow new blood to enter that very tight-knit circle. And we thought it was wise to invite you here to respond to the substance of Zahir Ali's claims.
No, I thought there were other issues that there were...
There are other issues, Azim, but we'll get to them. But let's deal with this one first.
That was the reason why you would have invited me. But Zahir Ali, first of all, is not a member of the Trinidad and Tobago Cricket Board. Trinidad and Tobago consists of 1.4 million people. And out of the 1.4 million people, Zahir Ali is the only person who is trying to run the board from outside of the board. Zahir Ali would have asked for a copy of, as a citizen, he would have asked for a copy of the proposed constitution. A copy was sent to him. After that, he would have sent an email to the secretary of the board, asking that he attend the meeting where the constitution would have been presented to the board and debated. Now, this meeting is only for members of the board. It is not for any person outside of the board. We indicated that to Mr. Ali. The secretary went further and invited Mr. Ali to a Zoom meeting to present his case, and also to submit in writing where they can discuss the matter in the Zoom meeting, whatever he had to propose. Mr. Ali, in an email dated the 30th of September, which was last week Thursday, in a line I want to read to you. Well, some other things that he had said. But he said, I am also unable to consider your previous alternatives at this time. And that was to meet with the General Secretary, with the first Vice President, and another member of the board. And on the morning of the meeting, Mr. Ali will have sent some proposals which were circulated to all the board members. Not one single member of the board saw it fit that to raise any issue for Mr. Ali's submission. So for Mr. Ali to say that none of his submission was even considered, and he's given the impression, George, as if it was not circulated to the board. All the board members would have gotten a copy on the morning of the meeting. And if the 42 or 43 people who would have attended the meeting did not see any reason why they should raise any issue or any concern Mr. Ali would have submitted, as president of the board, I don't see anything wrong with that.
All right, a moment of clarity now, Azim, on a couple of points. So yesterday, Zahir Ali said, I asked him directly, if he was certain that his submission was not circulated to members. He said that he was reliably informed that the issues from his submission were raised by one member on the open floor of the meeting, and that member told him that all of the board members did not get the submission. You are saying, though, that that's not true, that all the members did get the submission.
From my knowledge, the secretary indicated that he had sent out the email to all board members.
And the fact of no board members responding, no board member responded to say anything about the submission.
Absolutely. No one, I cannot recall anyone raised any issue that Mr. Ali had submitted. But I also want to remind you that Mr. Ali had indicated in writing that he did not, and I want to read again for you, George. He said that he is unable to consider your previous alternative at this time, which was to meet with the General Secretary, to meet with the first Vice President and another member of the board. Mr. Ali would have had his time and his chance of bringing whatever he wanted to submit to the board by going through these three people.
So in effect, he turned down the opportunity to give himself a fulsome hearing, you would say?
Well, it could be so. It could be so.
All right.
But I wouldn't know if that is the fact. But Mr. Ali was just trying to be difficult, I think, with the board members. As I want to reiterate again to you and your viewers that Mr. Ali is not a member of the board.
And that's where I was going. That's where I was going. Because, let me understand, the facilitation that you would have given to his request to make a submission, the steps that you say the Secretariat took to point him, to set up meetings with different individuals, different office holders, to air his concerns and to discuss his submission. You are saying that because he wasn't a member, is it that the TTCB did this out of courtesy? Or is there anything in your bylaws which compels you to make this kind of facilitation available to someone who wants to make a submission about the governance of the TTCB? Which is it?
It's out of kind courtesy, and also for someone, if someone had to offer any sort of advice to us to make our governance better, we were willing, George, more than willing to facilitate the gentleman.
So the impression a reasonable person may have drawn from what Zahir Ali said he submitted, and of course subsequent to his discussion with us on the SportsMax Zone yesterday, was that there's something about him that the TTCB, as it exists now, is trying to slap down, that they're perhaps trying to stymie and stifle his submissions from being aired appropriately, lest other people say, you know what, this sounds like a good idea, we think we should consider implementing it. You are here to say today that that is not so.
That is absolutely not so. And I want to stress again that the meeting was called for only board members. You are dealing with a constitution to make amendments to a constitution, and it is only the board members who can do that and who can attend the meeting.
All right, so as we move away now from the Zahir issue, I want to ask you, as you get ready to seek this fifth term in office, what would you bring differently to the Trinidad and Tobago Cricket Board that you probably didn't get to do in the 12 years that you were there before?
Well, I think if you look at cricket in the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago cricket has been the most successful in recent times. We just have to continue to do what we were doing. in 2021, in the CWI tournaments, there were one tournament, which was the Super 50 tournament. Trinidad and Tobago won that tournament. And also in the under-19 training camp that was held in Antigua, Trinidad and Tobago had the most set of players involved in that camp, which was 16. And I think had we not been doing a good job, we would not have won the Super 50 tournament, and we would not have had 16 young players in the under-19 Rising Star camp.
Yeah, and I know since the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been little to no activity in Trinidad and Tobago when it comes to sports. In a discussion with one of the members involved in cricket in Trinidad, they felt as if the TTCB should have done a bit more when it came to lobbying with the Prime Minister and whatnot. What would you say to that person?
There were several. That person would have known that there were several letters that we had written. Emails were sent to the Minister of Health, the Minister of Sport, and so on, requesting permission to even play a 50-over tournament in preparation for the Super 50 tournament, and that was denied. At one time, the COVID was severely affecting Trinidad. There were 700-800 cases. The government saw it fit to shut down the country and to don't allow sports to play. Everybody was very concerned about COVID, and I was not going to make myself irresponsible and push the government or push anybody for sport to be played in Trinidad and Tobago. We had to take precaution, and I made several calls also to the national community and to the cricketing public that they should they take the advice of the Ministry of Health and also to get the vaccination. Had we not been involved in sport and want sport to continue, we want to see all our athletes vaccinated so that sports can resume shortly.
Yeah, Mr. Bassarath, I don't want to challenge you on what you said earlier on about the performance of the administration of cricket in TNT over the past decade, because I think from the outside, looking in many areas in the Caribbean, think that Trinidad and Tobago's cricket is in fairly good hands. But I want to, you mentioned that Zahir Ali is not a board member, so let's not talk about Zahir Ali now, but let's talk about some of the points he made. Because the issue of term limits is something that you were quoted in a newspaper report this week to suggest that you are not in favor of, because Trinidad is too small and the population is too small to entertain the concept of term limits. Did the newspaper quote you accurately?
Let me correct you there. I was the first person to vote in favor of term limits for president. Zahir Ali raised an issue, I believe, and he said that term limits should also be for all the other officers of the board. And that is what I objected to. You cannot have at any particular time the entire 6 officers of the board leaving the board. And if all 6 officers leave the board at the same time, what will happen?
So is Trinidad bereft of talent in administration that you would feel uneasy about that?
There will be a time, Lance, when you will hardly get people to serve the cricket. And I am saying it wouldn't be next election or the other election, but sometime down the road. And we cannot recall in any organization where all the officers are removed from office after serving 2 consecutive terms.
Yeah. He also spoke about the president himself not being allowed to be a part of the executive for at least one cycle of administration. Is that something you oppose as well?
I am now hearing about that. I cannot recall hearing about that, and that idea is news to me.
Yeah, but he said it on the program as well, that he feels that the president, if he is replaced and after 2 terms, the Constitution should read that he cannot be a part of any ensuing administration until he qualifies to run again. Isn't that something you're aware of that he's saying?
I think what we passed in our Constitution was that after a president served 2 consecutive 4-year terms,
yes,
that he cannot come back into the executive after 4 years. He must allow a period of 4 years to pass before he can come back on the board at all.
Okay, not necessarily as president, as the board at all, because I think that's what Zahir Ali was saying.
Not necessarily as president, but he cannot cannot come on the board immediately after the.
Okay, and you're comfortable with that?
Very comfortable.
Okay, yeah, because that was
within the Constitution. And let me advise you and George that at the board's meeting on Saturday, there were 42 people who voted. 41 people voted in favor of the Constitution that was presented, and one person abstained.
Yeah. On the point, Azim, about the resignation, well, not resignation, the disqualification of members to serve after a 2-year cycle, which you say you are not, it doesn't find favor with you, but which Zahir Ali believes should be in place. There is merit in your line of thinking, because I'm thinking of a ministry in a government situation. That's why you have a permanent secretary, to ensure that all the talent and know-how doesn't move one time with a change of administration. If the PNM is voted in or the UNC, you have that permanence there. So, using the same example, could it be that further down the road you could have an amendment, Azim, that says, well, you're going to have perhaps two posts that are ring-fenced, and I'm using it in a positive sense now. 2 posts, whether it is that secretary or general secretary and another post, that these 2 positions are immune to this period disqualification to which other board members are subject. So, because you know that persons go on these boards on a slate most of the time. So you as president, so you line up who your vice president will be, who so-and-so will be. You go to an election and you hope that your delegates vote for you en bloc or take most of you, so you can carry out the agenda that you would have planned with your colleagues when thinking of running for office. So isolate 2 or so positions, make them immune to this term limit, and then the other members, including president, are subject to this term limit. So you can always encourage fresh ideas and new interests and persons to come forward, so that you can have a break in the homogeneity thinking, Azim Bassarath, that usually attend to the business of boards, such as the TTCB. And I'm not saying the TTCB has been guilty of that or suffered from that. I'm just saying that. What say you?
Well, that will be for the board members to decide. But I think if you have it for the president, and you, as you say, you are suggesting you go down the road and have it for maybe 1 or 2 of the officers, maybe that can work. I could support something like that, but definitely not the 6 officers removing at the same time.
Hear you on that. Well, all right. We are out of time. We will talk to you again. We want to wish you all the best in your bid for re-election, and we hope that, you know, the pandemic can break so that you can get back to the nitty-gritty, TNT can get back to the nitty-gritty of playing cricket and presenting and preparing youngsters for West Indies duties and for more. Thank you.
That's our duty, and that is what we will continue to do. I want to give you the good news, though, that the Prime Minister has indicated within recent times that, you know, sport will resume shortly, so we look forward for that.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be with you all.
All right, Azim, thank you as usual. Azim Bassarath there, the man at the helm of the TTCB. Horse racing at the track later.